Okay, everyone, welcome to July's membership meeting. Taylor has lined up a great guest again this evening. We'll go through that material, make sure you ask questions as we go, and then we'll save some time for questions of our guest and/or any other questions that you have. So with that, Taylor, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. So first and foremost, thank you, Elijio, for being here for tonight. Those who are Sounders fans and may have been at the rain match on what was it, Friday? He had the whistle for Friday, and then if you happen to be at the Sounders match on Saturday, you saw that smiling face as the fourth official. So pretty cool. We're pretty privileged to have him here today. It's not very often that you get an MLS official in your backyard and then being able to speak to you one-on-one personally. So we greatly appreciate you being here today and doing this presentation. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and let you take it from here and we'll keep rocking and rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. Yeah, as he mentioned, I had the pleasure of being up in Seattle this past weekend. In fact, that was my third trip to Seattle this year, so it's been a regular route for me. And I do want to also give credit and thanks to Taylor for not just this invitation. It was an exciting ask to be able to come here and speak to you today, but also for the fact that he's wonderfully hospitable every time we come up to Seattle. So he makes our jobs that much easier when we're at the stadium on game day. And I can only imagine you're in similarly good hands with your work together. So you're welcome, Taylor. And, with that background in mind, it was just a couple days ago that I chose to jump on with you or had the chance to jump on with you. But I think I've managed to put together something that hopefully will feel helpful for you on the subject of match preparation. And of course, I think one important thing to keep in mind as we talk through the different factors that I want to consider here is that, of course, and inevitably, these things are going to look different for each official, and they're going to look different at various levels of the game, right? So I've made an effort to introduce ideas that are widely applicable. So even though they might look a lot different on a Sunday afternoon in your youth league than they do at the professional level, I think that they're still relevant for all of us to implement. Exactly as Richard mentioned, I welcome questions both along the way and after the part of the presentation that I've prepared. So please don't hesitate to just find a good moment to unmute, or if it works better for you, to put a question in the chat, and maybe Taylor could keep an eye on that and let me know if something pops up that escapes my attention. So before we dig into the content here, I want to give you a little bit of a sense of how I came to this point in my refereeing career, so that you have an idea of who's speaking to you on this subject and what experience I bring to the table. So I first registered to referee in 2006 in Fort Bragg on the Mendocino coast of Northern California. So that was middle school for me, starting high school, and I was doing youth games and tournaments in my local area. I'd grown up playing soccer, a big part of my family and friendships, and it made sense to shift into that role. And it was from the start something that I really enjoyed, found it super rewarding, challenging, something that resonated with me. So when I came to San Francisco in 2010 for school at the undergraduate level, I made a point of integrating into the available leagues here. So continuing to referee mostly at the youth and high school level, as well as starting to do some local college games at like the Division III and community college level. And that was the start of establishing relationships and connections in my local association that later enabled me to advance. And so I think it was in that 2014 to 2018 stretch that I really started to more deliberately move forward in refereeing, with the sense that there were opportunities for advancement, and with the intent and aspiration of moving up. And that stretch included all manner of youth, adult, amateur, high school, college, travel for different tournaments. And this was all alongside working as a substitute teacher, while I figured out what my broader career interests were, outside of soccer. 2018, 2019 saw things sort of speed up for me. That's when I earned the opportunity to attend various US soccer events, including Development Academy playoffs and finals, Nike international friendlies in Florida, Steinbrecher Cup, Dallas Cup, adult amateurs, lots of events that got me high stakes, high intensity experience, and gave me a chance to perform in front of some folks who had the power to select people to move up to the professional level. And so it was around that time that I got my first professional whistles in the USL and started seeing some MLS fourth official assignments. So from then until now, my refereeing work has looked like navigating full professional seasons. With the advent of the collective bargaining agreement at the Pro 2 level, I'm now officially an employee with Pro as a Pro 2 official. And I've moved into the world of school counseling for my real job. So that, broadly speaking, is how I moved from starting refereeing to being on the matches that I do week in and week out now. And as I think you can see and probably identify with in your own way, it's a long journey. We dedicate so much time and energy to this, and it's a slow and steady process of moving forward in whatever way, whatever level works and is available for each referee. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the background that I'm bringing to this conversation. And without further ado, we can dive into the topic today, which is on the subject of effectively preparing for your matches. So I want to address three key areas that together make up the routine that works best for you, right? So within each of these areas, we're going to have individual differences, but the ultimate goal is to find a routine that enables you to be at your best on the day of the game and to perform to your potential. Personal and mental well-being is essential. So I acknowledge that is quite broad, and that's me sort of taking the 30,000-foot view of preparing for a match, but I couldn't omit it because I think it's such an important part of our work. It so heavily influences the energy that we bring to the game. Physical readiness is obviously an important component of our work as officials. And again, this needs to be personalized, but there are certain aspects that we should all be attending to. And then third, technical readiness on the subject of laws of the game, pre-match discussions, preparation and research for each game is the third main component that, as I sat down to prepare this, occurred to me as important for everyone to consider. But again, I want to emphasize that what works best is the routine that's effective for you. And that might look somewhat drastically different from someone else's. So as long as you're being consistent in how you prepare and finding that it's effective, I think that's entirely appropriate. So on the subject of personal and mental well-being, again, sort of the super broad view of how we approach preparing for our games, or better said, how we approach presenting as officials. It might not surprise you to hear a high school counselor, which is my real job, talk about the importance of self-care and satisfaction outside of your refereeing work. This should go without saying, but it's also essential to emphasize. I know that if I'm feeling good in my daily life, if I'm enjoying myself outside of soccer, that I'm bringing my best ability to the soccer field. And times when I've struggled for a stretch of matches, or even for an individual match, quite reliably coincide with times that I'm not feeling at my best outside of the refereeing work. You know, if I'm struggling in my relationships, if my self-esteem is not at its peak, that inevitably affects the energy that I bring onto the field. So I think that attending to other aspects of your life in a meaningful way should never fall by the wayside. Psychological strength. This is similar in that, again, the confidence that we bring onto the field starts outside of it. And this is a line of work that inevitably entails a lot of pressure. So if we don't have that sense of self-assurance when we walk into the field, it's going to impact our experience and our performance significantly. I also think it's important to consider emotional health, especially because on the field, we want to carry ourselves with a sense of composure, with an air of control, not just over the match, but over ourselves. And a referee who is feeling that stability before they arrive to the game is much more likely to carry themselves with that composure during the match. And again, I can reflect on times in my career when I've brought a sense of agitation or frustration outside of soccer into a game, and then watched it back and thought to myself that I didn't look entirely myself during that game, or that I'm a little more vulnerable to the emotional reactions that can get the better of us when we want to be measured about what we're doing on the field. And then last but not least, your professional and personal relationships are the most important. More than any decision or assignment that I've made or received in my career, the most important thing to me is that the people I work with could speak positively of me, can look forward to working with me when they see our names together on an assignment. So I would encourage everyone to aspire to that same outcome. And look, not everyone is going to get along perfectly or become best friends because they have a game together. But it's important that we can carry ourselves professionally, and that outside of the game, we have people that understand and support our work. And I've included a couple visual examples of people and things that help me stay well-rounded. My siblings, and surfing, things that keep me happy outside of soccer, and mean that I can bring my best self to the field. Okay, so physical readiness is the second main category that I wanted to address. And I've broken that down into three areas for consideration. The first being your training. And that, of course, is going to look so much different for each referee. But no matter what it does look like, it's important, first of all, that it entail consistency. This is not something that we can do in a stop-start way if we want to be effective about it, because then we're not capitalizing on the improvements that we can make. So better than going all out on any given day and then leaving it alone for a week, it's important to set up a schedule that is sustainable for you. And that means working around the constraints of everyday life, work, family, personal pursuits. So that stuff shouldn't suffer. But if we want to be at our best when we're on the field, then we have to be preparing physically. So hopefully that means training in a way that imitates the work that we do on the field. Hopefully that means setting up training that includes both, not just both, but all manner of endurance, high intensity, interval style training, explosive and sprint related work, strength, core, and flexibility stuff for the sake of avoiding injury and staying fit in the long run. So that's where the variety comes in, because if we find ourselves doing the same thing over and over, then we're not going to be ready for the varying demands that the game presents to us. And the last thing to consider there is timing, by which I mostly mean that we need to be careful about when we start, right? Hopefully it's well before our season so that when the games start, we're already up to speed. Approaching an individual game, that means making sure that you're getting the rest that you need ahead of it, right? Not going hard the day before the game and then starting that assignment at a deficit. So those are a few things to think about when you're physically preparing for the game. Another is rest and travel. So depending on where your games are and what the extent of that time and distance to arrive is, it's going to vary, but it's just important to plan ahead, account for the unexpected, make sure you give yourself extra time if there are complicating factors, namely traffic along the way, and making sure that you're well rested the day of a game. Get a good sleep the nights before. Nights before. I try to attend to my sleep, ongoing basis, but especially the 2 nights before a game, because that's what really helps me be at my best. And then, of course, nutrition and hydration. And it's no accident that I've chosen to include this photo. This is from the 2018 Armed Forces tournament that was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And it was sweltering, aggressively hot, stiflingly humid. And this was a week where it was really difficult to manage that hydration factor. So especially when you're doing a series of games back to back, or when you're doing games in really rough conditions, this can't be an afterthought, because otherwise everything else is going to suffer. And then, of course, above and beyond the day before and the day of the game, like, we need to be taking care of ourselves in this manner as much as possible, because just like our training, it can't happen the day of and the day either side of a game and be enough, because otherwise we're just not going to be at our best. So I know this is a little bit broad because I'm not a sports scientist. I lean heavily on the experts at Pro who provide training plans for us, but there are things that we all know that worked for us that, as if we do them consistently and if we mix them up, are going to help us be the best we can on the field.
I think you have a lot of regional officials or folks who just came back from regionals there in Hawaii and Utah are probably nodding their head going, yes, they can relate to this.
Yeah, they are celebrating the power of Pedialyte and things of that nature. Yeah, this was a Pedialyte heavy week from which this photo came. So yeah, don't hesitate to take advantage of everything that helps in that regard. Mm-hmm. So you'll know the drill. All right, so we've talked about broader mental and personal well-being. We've talked about physical readiness. We'll start diving into a little bit more detail. Before we get to the third section, I wanted to just present an example. I made mention of the folks at Pro who provide the training for us. So this is sort of a snapshot of what a week of training leading up to a game looks like for me, from left to right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, with a rest day on Thursday. And I want to emphasize that, as you can see, there's a variety here. So there's strength work incorporated most days, that being the entirety of Monday, Tuesday being the sprint and explosive work, Wednesday including the high intensity interval training and strength and core stuff, and then Friday before a Saturday game being light, to just ensure that the body is warmed up, ready, gets a bit of movement. The only kind of workout that you're not really seeing in this stretch of the week is like a longer form, moderate intensity endurance exercise. Like I make an effort to incorporate time in the pool, because that's lower impact, or time on a stationary bike, for the same reason of saving the joints from the wear and tear of running. So both in terms of the style of training and the format, this is a good example of the type of variety that works for me. And so if you can find a routine, a rotation of workouts that works for you and stick to it, then I think you'll experience benefit that comes from that. Okay, Taylor, we all good in terms of questions or anything of the sort? Again, no.
Yeah, no, we're looking great right now. There's no questions. I absolutely love that last slide because I think and maybe you'll touch on this a little bit. I think a lot of what people think is, you get a game assignment on Monday and then your game's that Saturday, right? And I
Sure.
think once you reach the level that you're at, there's a lot more, whether you're a fan or a referee. I don't think people realize just how much you guys put into the work. I mean, these screenshots that you took of your workout, that is extremely impressive. It's not you just show up on game day, fly in, then after the game, you and I go to Outback Steakhouse and, have a good time. There is definitely a path. If you're wanting to go pro, there is a lot of stuff that you guys not only mentally do, but physically along the way. So it's impressive. So I'm really happy you put that in.
Sure.
Mr. Ray Moffitt has a question. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Ray Moffitt is our national coach around here.
Okay. Ray, go for it.
I think the key thing from your the picture you have up right there is that you're active, regardless of what you do. Do something, because again, even I wouldn't probably be able. That's your workout, but I guess the question for everyone on the call is, what is your workout? What is it? And I think the key thing is don't do nothing between games. Do something between games. And what I'm seeing here is kind of have a day that's a little bit more vigorous than others, but keep the body moving, keep it flowing. That way you're ready for your game, because you talk about getting ramped up for a season. Well, for guys on the call here, the season is all year round.
Yep.
It's all year round. But don't just sit around and walk around and sit on the couch between games. Just be active. And I think that's the key thing that I hope when people are listening from this.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfectly said, Ray. And on that note, like, there are days when I have something this specific scheduled, this extensive scheduled, and frankly, I'm just not feeling it, or I'm more tired than the training schedule might suggest. And those are days where I'll either allow myself a rest because it's what my body is telling me it needs, or I'll find an alternative, something more enticing, more enjoyable in its own right that still keeps my body moving. Lately, that might look like going and playing pickleball when I don't really feel like doing a sprint workout, which is not the same thing and doesn't entail the same physical load for me. But it is, as Ray said, infinitely better than nothing, better than being sedentary. So yeah, your body has to be in a rhythm, and whatever activities might maintain that are going to be different. But to keep something going is critical. So I appreciate that perspective, Ray. Okay, so let's see if we can forge ahead here to the last main category that I mentioned I wanted to address, which is technical readiness. That starts with command of the laws of the game and confidence in their application. So hopefully it goes without saying that we all need to be as thoroughly well-versed as possible in that text, and to be as to experience as few surprises as possible on the field, because there are going to be unique situations that challenge us. So the more familiar we are with that information, the stronger and more confident we'll be in that regard. And aside from studying the text itself, this can also look like reviewing the different resources that are available out there. So that might include, and I mean, your presence here is a perfect example of your engagement with the instruction that your association is providing. Watching games and being tuned in to what's happening in the world of soccer is an awesome way to be sharp in this regard. and reviewing the different publications that come out from organizations like Pro, analyzing different situations is also super helpful. So even if it might look different at your level of the game, the concepts can be similarly applicable. The patterns can be pertinent there. So that's where it starts, is knowing that book back to front and being confident in it. More specifically, you also need to be sharp with the rules of competition in your local leagues and tournaments. And then, if applicable, right, not every league is going to publish or advertise these, but points of emphasis can also be relevant. So, like, for a bit of context, in MLS, USL, and NWSL, we're working with points of emphasis around persistent offenses, dissent, stopping promising attacks, and delaying the restart. So there's an expectation and an understanding of heightened attention to those issues. And it's possible that at different times or in different seasons, the leagues you're working in might have their own issues that they're attending to. And that could mean something as varied as, at a youth level, expectations around where parents are sitting and how or whether they're interacting with players and officials during the match. It comes down to the culture of those games, to the culture of that league. So that's why I think if points of emphasis isn't the practice or isn't the phrase that's active in that space, just knowing the expectations, the tendencies of that league can go a long way, because it means that you're a step ahead of deliberately approaching that game in a way that's going to attend to what the players are used to, and the type of game that you want to orchestrate. So yeah, being sharp on that when it comes to like working as a fourth official, especially knowing the substitution details for that competition, knowing the eligibility of who can be in the technical areas and who can play in each match. Those details are tedious but essential, because we are ultimately responsible for enforcing those things, and we can't count on other stakeholders to adhere to them or to observe them for us. That's a big responsibility. And then last but not least, it's essential to know the matchup, by which I mean as much as you can, depending on the information that's available in that context. Have a sense of the tactics, know what the team's tendencies are in terms of style of play. Do they like to restart quickly? Do they like to high press? Do they sit back and let their opponents come at them? Do they tend to play a lot of diagonal balls? Do they have designed set plays? And this might not always be available information, but talking to your colleagues who have seen these teams is generally your best resource. So making an effort to reach out in advance of the game, ideally as soon as you see the assignment come through, can be super helpful, because those folks have experienced it on the field. They can probably also tell you about the personalities of the players and of the technical staff, so that you know what to expect. You have a sense of who might challenge you on the field as far as dissent, or in terms of patterns of fouls. Who is going to be a good partner on the team to help manage the temperature of the match, to address a player who's otherwise challenging you, right? If you can go to a player who you know is a calming personality, then that's an extra tool in your toolbox. And when it comes to the technical areas, knowing the tendencies, knowing the behaviors of the coaches can be super helpful, because you want to be surprised as seldom as possible, right? The fewer surprises we experience, the easier it is to navigate our games. And then I think trends is similar. By trends, I think I mean league standings, the form of the team that can influence the sense of confidence or frustration that they're bringing to each game. If they've had pattern of a lot of misconduct then you might approach managing that team a little bit differently, right? Knowing what their history has been in that regard. So, this is all information that can only be of assistance to us. So it's important that we start to do our homework early, in advance of each of these assignments, so that we're not surprised by what happens when we get to the game.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Each one of the topics you brought up today, they all feed off of each other. And you said a couple key points. I always try to keep notes. I got a couple pages of notes actually on this presentation only. But they all feed on each other. So one of the things you brought up that really struck out to me was knowing your competition. Right now, obviously I'm in the NWSL world. We have not the Challenge Cup, but the Summer Cup going on. We still have regular play kind of finishing up. There's just so many rules of competition that's going.
Yeah.
And you really hit one that I think all of us can relate to, which is call a colleague. That's not lost even at the pro level. Everyone is always talking to everybody. What do you know about this person? What do you know about that person? Usually one of the first things the officials ask me is, and you actually did it the other day. Hey, is there anything I should know that might catch me by surprise? So as soon as you said that, I was going, yep. Everyone talks, and whether you're doing high school rec, what have you, I think we all have people. As soon as Elio said that, we go, oh, I have that partner in crime where I can lean on them and kind of shoot ideas off of them and kind of ask questions because you just saw this high school last week and I got this big matchup the following weekend. So that's really cool how you brought that in there, that we can all feed off of each other. And one of the things is just the laws of the game. I think that's kind of a lost art at times. We are paid at the end of the day to know the laws of the game and enforce the laws of the game, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you're rec level, grassroots level, or professional level. That's always a really big part of the game. That is at the end of the day why we are out there. Make sure everyone's safe and abiding by the laws of the game. So it's fascinating that it just keeps going one after another, just keeps building on each other. So
yeah.
Okay.
No, keep going, please.
Well, I was going to ask you a question, which is, so you get a game assignment. For those who don't know, Pro typically sends out an assignment 2 weeks to a month in advance. Mm-hmm. As soon as you see that game assignment come across your email, what's some of your routine? Do you immediately start watching game footage? Are you going on a run watching the footage? What are some of the things that you do to prepare for a match as soon as that game comes through? Do you reach out to some of your colleagues and say, hey, what's this about? I know I received a couple notes already about the Wrexham game on Friday. What do you know about them? What's kind of your routine as soon as you get that game assignment?
Yeah, I mean, I lean pretty heavily on the league websites because they have super detailed information. And again, that's why I wanted to acknowledge that there's going to be a difference in the extent of available information at different levels. But with the professional games, I'm looking closely at where that team is in the standings, at which direction they're trending, if they're having a stretch of positive performances or if they're struggling recently. I'm very interested in looking through the summary of each game to see if there were significant decisions that went for or against them, because that can just influence the mood relative to refereeing that they bring to the game. It's not something that informs in any manner decisions that I'll make during that game. But it's context that can be helpful in how I interact with those players, or as fourth official, how I interact with that coach, because I know that's influencing the emotion that they're bringing to the game. I won't pretend like I have the capacity to watch full matches for every team that I'm refereeing week in and week out. But I will look through matches for key moments. And if I see something that piques my curiosity, I'm much more likely to pick up the phone to talk to the official on the match about their experience of that game more broadly. So it can vary based on the assignment or based on the information that might emerge when I start looking into it. But those are generally some of the places that I'll start. I also wanted to offer an anecdote or two relative to what Taylor was describing earlier, which is that, yes, I speak to the liaisons in each stadium because they tend to have a sense of some of the stuff that's happening behind the scenes for the teams, right? They're in that atmosphere more often. And so they have a pretty good sense of like the temperature of the emotional temperature of the teams and the coaches. So that's helpful. It's not just your fellow officials, but other people who are involved in the game who might have some insights. And then as far as laws of the game, that just preserves or can sacrifice so much of our credibility. And beyond accuracy, a sense of trust and credibility is a huge factor in how people interact with us. Right? If players have a sense of trust with you, they're way more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt on a decision that's in the gray area. And so the more we have the opportunity to show our strength with that, the better things are going to be. On Saturday night, Alan Chapman, somewhat suddenly from the perspective of people not paying close attention to it, stopped the game while LAFC was in possession and cautioned an LAFC striker who was upset that he hadn't had a foul called in his favor a few seconds before. And Steve Cherundolo, the coach for LAFC, was immediately looking my way, not angry, not upset, more confused than anything, trying to understand the reason for the caution and the subsequent restart, which, as I trust most of you will know, stop the match to caution or send off a player. The restart is an indirect free kick for the opposing team at the location of the offense. And that wasn't something that he had ever seen happen in a game. And it's not something that we often employ because on many occasions we're perhaps applying advantage and then showing misconduct at the next stoppage. But I was able to explain to him, yep, dissent. And because the stoppage was to administer that caution, we now have a free kick for Seattle. Granted, the fact that he was winning 3-0 probably made it a little bit easier for him to swallow that restart, but he just said, oh, okay. I had no idea. I learned something new every day. And so that's a small, like relatively inconsequential interaction, but it's something that is an example of how we can slowly and surely build and preserve our credibility relative to that. All right. Last but not least, so we have our three overarching categories: the personal well-being, the physical readiness, and the technical readiness, and those all culminate into bringing us to the day of the game, where it's essential to have a routine that leaves no stone unturned and that works for you personally. So that starts with your pre-match communication. That might be sending an email to your teammates describing the details of your arrival time, coordinating your uniform colors, ensuring that together everyone will have the equipment that you need to be successful in the game, including backup as necessary, and simply making sure that everyone's on the same page. This is where you start building the team culture, right? Getting everyone together so that you are on the same page approaching and throughout that game. So, it's important to do this at least a couple days ahead of the assignment so that there aren't any surprises. Make sure that everyone knows where to be, when, and what to have with them. The second item here is entirely up to each individual, right? So you're going to have little habits, little quirks that help you get in the zone, so to speak, that help you feel focused for each game. So for me, each weekend, that means sleeping in as late as I can manage, having a big breakfast, spending as little energy as possible during the middle part of the day, having an hour or so nap in the afternoon, having a medium-sized lunch 4 hours or so before the game. It means listening to the same music in the locker room ahead of each match, so that gets me in the right mindset. Taylor might, offer some details on the subject, but I'm going to see how close he was paying attention, actually.
Well, and you know this, I just had to laugh because one of the inside jokes we always do is when I drive the golf cart from the locker room to the walkout,
Mhm.
and you can kind of touch on this. That's typically when referees are most nervous. You know, you
Sure.
start hearing the drums starting to beat. You kind of hear the roar of the crowd. You start getting into the mindset.
Yeah.
And I always have the habit of playing Taylor Swift, Black Eyed Peas, or something like that to try to break up some of the monotony of all the pressure that they're feeling on their shoulders. So it's funny because it is very true. Every referee has Natalie Simon for sure has a playlist. Every referee has their little playlist that they turn on in that locker room. So that's actually a really big one. I know you guys are probably thinking like, oh man, that's kind of the silliest thing ever, but it's finding that sense of norm and kind of the chaos, right? Even at halftime, sometimes just play a little music to kind of find where your norm is. So yeah, that's a fun one.
Yep. And for me these days, it's Taylor Swift's Reputation pre-match that gets me hyped, gets me in the zone, and then it's Lover post-match because I get to sort of settle down. It's a little smoother, a little slower. Um, last season it was Rise Against, like more of a up-tempo punk sound that really got me like amped. And so it can shift, but it's important to have some regularity because that association, that process, just builds towards being in the right mindset when you walk out onto the field. Um, you have to facilitate a strong pre-match discussion. This cannot be an afterthought or a formality, and that could be an hour-long topic in and of itself. So I won't dive into great detail, but it needs to address your teamwork and communication. It needs to review the tactical details regarding the teams, the personalities regarding the players. It needs to address specific key decisions that you might need to make during the match. And who's going to take the lead in each situation, what process you expect to be followed. Even if you're working with folks with whom you're familiar, and my teammates can attest to this, even when I've had multiple games, I still stick with the same discussion because if nothing else, talking through those processes helps me visualize the way I want to work on the field. So it might feel redundant, it might feel a little bit repetitive, and you might say things that feel like they should go without saying in that process. But it's way better to address those things explicitly than to find yourself in a situation where you realize you don't know what your referee expects from you as an AR in that moment, or when as referee you're looking for something from your AR or fourth official that you're not getting because you didn't address your expectations. So there are things that are universal in terms of laws of the game, and there are things that are unique to how we each work and the match that we're managing on that day that deserve attention in that pre-match discussion. And then last but not least, post-match review and reflection has to happen for us to get better for the next game. So that means honestly evaluating our performance, seeking feedback from people we trust who saw the match, from teammates with whom we worked on the match. If available, it means reviewing footage of the match and bringing an open mind to that to identify and celebrate what you did well, and then to acknowledge and address the areas for improvement. So those are the things that I think help everyone through a successful game day after addressing those three broader categories to be ready for the assignments when they come through. So Taylor, that's the extent of what I have prepared for folks.
Yeah, no, I
Happy to
appreciate
address
that.
any questions, whether it's on this topic or otherwise that folks might have.
Yeah, so if you guys want, you can go ahead and raise your hand in the you guys have the capability to raise your hand. I'll go ahead and start off with the first question, and as you guys want, we'll just kind of ping pong them afterward. So as you were moving up and when you decided to take it more seriously, I think the question I get asked quite a bit from a lot of the officials are, how many games should I be doing? I think we get in the habit, and there's nothing wrong with this. Officials will do 8 games in a weekend, and then they'll turn around, get injured, kind of burn themselves out, and then
Yeah.
they'll try to do the same thing, weekend after weekend after weekend,
Right.
which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. But as you're trying to take it more seriously and as you're trying to move up, would you say, do more quality over quantity, or what kind of games did you start looking over? And granted, the landscape has changed quite a bit from when we were kind of, but what kind of games would you start looking out for as an up and coming referee?
I mean, first and foremost, quality is ultimately more important than quantity. At the same time, that quantity can help you build valuable experience. So, I'm not knocking getting games under your belt, and in many contexts, that's the way it works. I remember starting to do youth games here in San Francisco, where there was a requirement that if you were going to be available, you had to be on at least 2 games back to back, right? So there was an enforced minimum volume. And then, of course, there'd be tournaments where you were doing anywhere from 4 to 6 games in a day. And look, we've been there. It adds up. It is risky because it is a lot of load on your body. But then I think as you move forward and as you have the opportunity to do hopefully higher level games, that's when it becomes really important to focus on bringing your best performance to each game, because no matter how fit you are, like you're going to start to struggle when you're managing that number of games. And I've even experienced it in a different way at the professional level, where on a rare occasion I'll have Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, and if those are all whistles, I'm struggling to rally for that Saturday game at the end of that stretch, because of the challenge of recovering, because of the mental fatigue that comes with that. So I think that starting to prioritize assignments and then practicing your self-advocacy in the process. Self-advocacy meaning, being transparent with your assigners about the wear and tear that you might be experiencing. And on the other hand, making sure that people are paying attention to your assignments, because you could do 100 games, but if the right folks aren't aware of where and when you're working, although that's still valuable experience for you, it might not help your cause directly with the folks that matter in terms of opportunities for further advancement. So yeah, they both have a place, but you have to look out for yourself and advocate for yourself in that process.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. If you want to move up, you have to tell somebody, I want to be seen. And not to toot Washington's horn, but I think we have a very good infrastructure as far as getting, bunch of mentors, we have a handful of national coaches. So I think it's a good atmosphere that we have around here. So if you guys on this call definitely want to move up, just be sure to, like you said, self-advocate. So, all right. Do we have any questions that are in the chat? I don't see any in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Anything you guys want to ask? Again, he was on the MLS 4th just this Saturday, so back to back. All right, all right, all right.
I have a question.
Right.
As a coach, a referee coach, someone who assesses people.
Yeah.
And me and Wayne were together yesterday, and we talk about this in terms of misconduct. And I know, and I'll be the best way to, because it's a pet peeve of mine, is when the game is going smooth for like 16 minutes, and in the 17th minute, you have that hard foul. And what I keep seeing is that referees aren't recognizing that, geez, for 16 minutes, it was real smooth. And in the 17th minute, someone has decided to make our game interesting, and they don't react to it. And that doesn't always mean give a yellow card, but at least to manage the situation. What can you discuss, because sometimes, because you're middle fourth official, correct? You're not an assistant referee, correct?
Correct, Ray. Yeah.
So what do you do as a fourth official, communicating with your referee? And obviously you have the microphone on, and lots of times we don't.
Yeah.
how do you communicate to the referee that, geez, something weird just happened and you need to deal with it, whether it's yellow card or whether it's have a conversation with the player just to keep things on an even keel? Can you address that?
Happily, yeah. And I'll come to the fourth official part, but I think your question resonates with me because this season, one of the things I'm working really hard on as a referee is identifying those moments where we see 100% misconduct, something that needs to meet with a yellow or red card, and situations where we have options, which does not mean doing nothing beyond calling a foul, but can and should mean elevating your emotional intensity, adjusting your body language in a way that, even absent a yellow or red card, communicates to players, to coaches, to spectators, and other stakeholders that what happened is not business as usual, that it's not acceptable to continue in the match. So having options beyond showing a card is super important. And it's one of the most challenging things because we work so hard at identifying the details of a foul and coming to those conclusions. And so beyond that, there's the nuance of, okay, this might not rise to the level of misconduct, but how can I show that it can't continue unmitigated? And that's something that we all have to work on. As far as the fourth official perspective, I think that starts in the pregame, right? I made a point in this past weekend's match, for example, of asking Alan Chapman, what do you want from me when plays tight to the technical area? And I see something that's for me a clear foul, and you either aren't reacting or you're saying something drastically different. And so you're going to get different responses from different officials. But in this case, it was, tell me clearly, confidently, and quickly what you have, even if and when I, in this case, I being Alan as the referee, say, no, if you have something clearly to the contrary, don't hesitate to insist. And that might not be the response from every referee, so you have to work within that. But similar to the way that we moderate our visual and emotional response on the field, your teammates should hear the difference in your tone when you're addressing them over a communication system. So beyond the words that you're using, your delivery carries so much weight, right? A simple foul carries a lot different impact than a forceful foul, manage, it's number 6 again, right? We're paying attention to persistent offenses perhaps. So making sure you at least give the referee the information and communicate that impression, because from the outside looking in, we often have a different and sometimes better or more helpful sense of the impact of a situation than the referee does. Because to be honest, as referees, sometimes we're too close. Sometimes we have that tunnel vision and we don't sense the broader perception, right? We might feel like we're having a normal interaction with the player, but from a distance, it sure as hell looks like they're surrounding us and dissenting towards us. So I think that it's important to offer your perspective in a way that is evident in the tone. More important than what you say, which can be clarified in the pregame, your delivery goes a long way.
With respect to when you're in the middle, and I'm going to assume that you always wear the radio and the buzzer from the beeper flag, correct? When you're in the middle.
I don't wear the beeper flag buzzer, to be transparent with you. So I always have the unit for the communication system on my arm. Yeah.
Okay, that's even perfect from where I'm going with this, because this is something. It's funny. I've been repping forever, and this finally happened the last weekend. You know, the classic case to where the flag goes up and the referee doesn't notice it. Now, at your level, they're going to delay the flag anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. But at the games that we do, when the flag goes up and all of a sudden you got 25 parents, look at your AR, look at your AR.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that when the flag is going up, they're talking to you at the same time. I'm going to raise my flag. There is a bit of communication going on those offside decisions, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If they have all the information they need to make the decision, I ask them to tell me good, so that I don't have to worry about it anymore, or to simply say offside, or off as the flag is being raised. There are times when they might need info from me, so I'm either already telling them touch if it was an attacking teammate that last touched it, where it's tough for them to see, or I'm saying defender when there's been a deliberate play and the flag should stay down even if it was offside position. So in both directions, there's consistently communication on that type of decision. Yeah.
And I appreciate that answer, and that's where I'm coming from in terms of when, you know, it's all when you're the referee coach and you're close to the AR when their flag is up, and he or she is standing there silent. It's like, can you at least call your friend's name? Because you have a unique name, so you're going to be the only one out there with your name.
Yeah.
You will look, and that's my point. I'm thinking now that every time an assistant referee, especially when you're not using the beeper flag, you should always just call your referee's name when you raise your flag, so they will look right away.
Totally. Yeah.
The one where the offside's in between the two of you, they see it. But sometimes when you're going to the corner flag away from the assistant referee because of where your shoulders are, you don't see the flag. But if you were to hear your name, you're naturally gonna look. There could be 25 rays on the field, but if I hear my name, I'm going to look.
Yeah.
And I think
in situations where delay is not relevant, like we want to avoid unnecessary complications as much as possible. The longer play continues when it should be stopped, the more likely we have a challenge or a collision that results in injury. The more likely the credibility of the decision suffers because of the perception of time it took to blow the whistle. So yeah, like that would be perfectly appropriate in a situation where you can hear each other without the comms. Yeah. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah. All good questions. So out of respect of our presenters' time, we have hit the hour mark. So we greatly appreciate you being here today. I do not want to speak for you, but if anyone has any follow-up questions, things that you think of after this meeting, by all means, you can shoot them my way and I'll pass them on. We'll be sure to get an answer to you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please don't hesitate to send your questions or thoughts or whatever it might be Taylor's way. I'll make every effort to attend to that. That would be no problem.
We appreciate that. Well, with that being said, Richard, I see you have a little exit survey. So do you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so Elijio, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I think sometimes referees don't put enough time and energy in the off the field activities to prepare them adequately for the on field activities where they actually can perform better with that investment of time and energy. So thank you for walking through all those pieces for us tonight.
You're welcome.
We have created an exit survey and would appreciate you filling that out. We want to make sure that we're providing you information that you're looking for and that can help you in your development of your referee career. We do have another month of tournament games occurring. And so this coming weekend, Cameron and Cody Zip are actually helping to assign a fundraising event for a adult 6v6 tournament at Starfire. So for those of you who are unable to make it to RDA with us and are in town and have some time on Saturday, I know Cody and Cameron would appreciate your assistance with covering those games. And then for August, as you all know, we pretty much have a tournament somewhere in our area that needs officials for our youth games. Next month, our Zoom meeting will be the covering of all of our different league rules. And so as we get out of the tournament season and our 30-minute halves and no stoppage time, we'll get refocused into each of our leagues that we officiate and what their rule nuances are. And so that way you'll have all that information straight before starting games in September. And with that, I thank everybody for coming out tonight, and we will see you hopefully in August.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again.
Thanks so much for being here, y'all. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.